All right, let's talk about lockdowns 2.0. And apparently it is going according to plan. So we've been warning you for months on this show that the next wave of lockdowns was coming. As far back as last year, we pointed to evidence of new propaganda being used around new COVID variants that they would use to scare us into submission. Mask mandates, school closures, American TV anchors pushing us into panic mode. Russia warned a few days ago that the United States was planning the next pandemic. Their intelligence, listen to this. Their intelligence services were seeing a push for a new COVID variant as a pretext for all of this. Look at that. Russia claims U.S. preparing for a new pandemic by searching for virus mutations. So Russia was all over this, regardless of how you feel about Russia. Were they right? The new scary variant is called, what is it called?
Parola.
Parola?
Or Varrola.
Parola, Loliola. And it's claimed its first victim. It's claimed its first victim today, Dr. Jill Biden. She was so young. Last night, she tested positive for the new variant. Remember, just so you know, I mean, she didn't die. She's got like the sniffles. So we need to lock down the country as a result. Remember, she is double boosted and double vaccinated. She's double vaxxed and double boosted. And we now know that this new variant really likes vaccinated people.
We absolutely know this, and we covered this last week, that the CDC is telling us that being vaccinated is a risk factor for developing COVID. It literally says, and rewind the tape on the CDC's website, that it is more likely to infect those who have been vaccinated. So, okay, here's your test case. That turns out to be true. That is what a lot of immunologists had warned would happen if we continue to vaccinate. Then the virus could mutate. Seems like that is actually happening. Now, what are they going to do? Because Joe Biden is so old that he is a risk factor just being alive at this point. It's, again, not just because he's old, but because he's old and he's not with it. I don't want to be ageist in any way, shape, or form, but the guy is a walking risk factor, right? So what's the president going to do? Well, Karine Jean-Pierre today said that the president will wear a mask. Well, first she said that he was going to continue to test at a regular cadence and monitor for symptoms, because that's his wife, who knows when they were together last. And then she further went on to say at the pulpit just today that the president is going to exhibit masking and social distancing a la 2020. Watch what she has to say.
And finally, an update on the president and the first lady since she tested positive for COVID-19 last night. I can tell you that the First Lady is experiencing mild symptoms and will remain in Delaware for the week. President Biden tested negative last night for COVID-19 and tested negative again today. He's not experiencing any symptoms. As far as the steps he is taking, since the president was with the First Lady yesterday, he will be masking while indoors and around people in alignment with CDC guidance. And as has been the practice in the past, the president will remove his mask when sufficiently distanced from others indoors and while outside as well. The CDC guidelines recommend a combination of masking, testing, and monitoring for symptoms. The president is doing all of that in close consultation with his physician.
Okay, so now it's time to go back to those rules. Remember when most of them were dropped?
Yeah.
Now the CDC is saying that if you've tested positive, you should isolate. Now it's 10 days. Remember when they dropped it to 5? They have increased that again. They do say that you should mask indoors, even though the World Health Organization only says that masking may help. They are not saying that it's been proven. Over the weekend, Fauci was asked whether or not, masks really work, because more and more studies are being shown that they don't, and also that they are a risk factor for other respiratory problems. And he said, well, that was one study. There are other studies. He did not bring those studies to tell us what that means and why.
And of course, if you go back to the beginning of COVID, when he was like, no, you don't need a mask. You don't need a mask. You don't need to do that, any of that stuff. And then he suddenly changed his tune. And now he's continuing.
He even said it's just theater.
Yeah, he said exactly. He said it's theater. If you want to wear it because you feel better about yourself, and you do that, right? So, yeah, this is coming back. Oh, and Oh, yeah, we just got some breaking news. Also, this variant is taking out all of the people you care about, not just Dr. Jill Biden, but now Whoopi as well.
As you can see, Whoopi is not here. She has COVID. Yes, it's back. It's back. It's back.
Can you believe it?
It's back,
Like
she
right
says.
on time.
Well, it's not
like,
that it's back because, we saw this spike last fall and we are expecting to live with it as part of our lives. It's that their rules are back.
Yeah. And instead of treating it like we treated it last fall, just like the flu, and okay, who gives a rat's ass at this point? Treat it like you would the flu. Treat it like you would any other seasonal, flu virus. But now you have schools in certain parts of the United States already closing their doors, and counties already considering mandates on masking and also closures as well. In-person learning closing down. So in Kentucky, 2 Kentucky school districts suspended in-person classes due to COVID-19. 3 school districts in the country have also canceled in-person learning. Again, 2 just in Kentucky. All as these local officials right now are trying to they're reporting like such a huge rise in COVID-19. So we need to clamp things down. Watch this Kentucky news report.
First weeks of the academic year, multiple Kentucky school districts are already feeling the impacts of COVID and other sickness. Lee and Magoffin County schools are closed for the rest of the week because of illness. Laurel County is tracking a rise in COVID cases from school-aged children, and the Woodford County Health Department is also seeing an increase in COVID cases.
Yeah. So let's ruin these children's lives even more than we already have by keeping them home for more weeks, taking them out of the academic, face-to-face learning with teachers and the social ability that they get, of course, from that. The amount of damage that was done as a result of keeping kids home during lockdowns.
And plus, the CDC in August updated fatality rates for COVID, and it is hovering between 1% and 2%. That's true. Now, the media sort of ran with that and said, oh, has it been this all along? Have we been lied to? What we know is that in August, the fatality rate was between 1% and 2%, meaning between 1% or 2% of people who test positive for COVID will have a rough time and it could end their lives. Now, is this a proportionate response to something that does now, and I know you were not supposed to say this in the height of the pandemic, but it does now have a fatality rate that equals the flu? So why would we do this?
Well,
This is something we need to ask ourselves.
And also another frustrating thing is there's actually no data supporting that kids can't get through COVID. And there's actual factual data that backs up that the masks and the mandates hurt them. So it's like they're going on the side where there's no data against the no data to back things that have tons of data.
Yes.
That makes no sense.
I could, in looking at the prep for this story, I'm like, well, I can bring these stories about masking. I can bring these stories about vaccination. I can bring these stories about in-person learning. I can bring these stories about natural immunity. I can bring all sorts of, I feel like I shouldn't need to. We should universally accept that we did those things wrong and that we should not repeat it. But it seems like the narrative right now is, let's do that again.
Well, I just don't understand. And again, this is happening in multiple parts of the country, and you're hearing this now from the White House. Like, this is, people can like sort of blindly fall for this, and they're going to go along and say, no, this is not happening. It's not happening in my neck of the woods. Great. That's amazing. Okay. Well, then you don't live in Kentucky where this is happening. You don't live in South Texas where it's actually happening. You don't live in New York where it's happening. And you don't live in Los Angeles County where it's now being talked about. So here was a mask-wearing LA County Public Health Director, Barbara Ferrer, encouraging masks, ventilation, hand washing, and vaccines during this COVID meeting that they just had over the past, I think it was 48 hours ago. Watch.
At this point, when should people wear masks in schools, and is it ever mandatory?
Well, ever is not a word I'm comfortable with. Everyone knows that, I think by now, that, there's no place for, that level of certainty with this pandemic at this point. So I'm not going to say there's never going to be a time where we might need to all put our masks back on.
Okay. So there she is giving a speech way back from an audience wearing a mask the whole time. I mean, this is the madness that we're starting to see creeping up again at airports.
I mean, again, I can also bring studies that show that those single-use masks have very high level of toxins, and we are still in warm weather, and the toxins release at higher concentrations in warm weather. So, okay, again, all of these things, I could bring them. I've been, we've been looking at this all along. We'd be here all day. This should be a foregone conclusion by now.
So New York schools. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm kind of working on a thing for locals, a story, and I've been tracking Twitter on all of these MDs and doctors and stuff that are now saying masks and all this other stuff. And if you look at that, it's like, shouldn't we be questioning the credentials of medical professionals that are still pushing that type of thing, knowing all of the data that they've seen?
Yeah, Philip, let's skip the let's go to the next one here, the TV doctors sound, because this is exactly this. This is TV doctors. You've seen a number of them. These are TV doctors. I don't know what they're doing, but they're popping up on a lot of local news stations saying, yeah, mask up, take the vaccines, stay at home when necessary, do all of these things once again if you get COVID. Watch.
So there are these transmissible, meaning contagious Omicron subvariants running around right now. The BA.286 variant is the one that scientists are watching most closely. There's only been a handful of confirmed cases in the U.S., but it is a variant of interest because it's so contagious. I want to be clear, though, there's no indication that it causes more severe or more serious disease than any of the other strains of COVID. In terms of what people can do, this is the time to double down on what we know already works. Stay up to date on all of your vaccinations, including the new COVID booster that's coming this September. Wash your hands, wear masks when it's appropriate, test when you feel sick, and stay home if you test positive for COVID.
So a lot of people in the chat saying, do not comply, do not comply. Yes, but this is the thing. When they force this on people once again in public transportation, your bus routes, your subways, your airlines, what are you going to do? Like, this is coming.
I just wonder why she says these are the things we already know work.
Right. Everything she just said is a lie.
The FDA has not fully approved the COVID vaccine, so we don't have full clinical trials, especially of the updated booster. We absolutely
and she would have been more correct.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, she'd have been more correct to say we know they do not work.
If she just would have reversed
one word in there.
Yeah, she would have reversed it. Then her statement would have been correct. Everything she just said was inaccurate.
Well, in fact, can we skip ahead to this Epoch Times story? Because the Epoch Times just today is reporting that the CDC hid breakthrough COVID cases, meaning that they knew that people who were vaccinated were getting COVID at alarming rates, and the CDC decided to suppress this data. What's worse is that the data was from nursing homes. So the CDC knew from this military contractor called Humetrix that did a study, found that there was a rise in COVID cases amongst vaccinated seniors in nursing homes, and they knew this as early as January 2021. Now, January 2021, the vaccine was not even being rolled out into anyone who was not a senior. So they knew this from the first population that, oh, wait, they're still getting COVID. And also, they're more prone to go to the hospital having had this. This data is shown to have been in the CDC's hands. So when she says, let's do things we know work, I'm just wondering what data she sees that I don't see, because I am waiting. You can have it on my desk by morning for the studies that show that the vaccine did, in fact, lower hospitalization rates or death rates or any of that stuff, because I don't know where that study is.
No, as Dr. Peter McCullough has said in the past 24 hours, absolutely that's not the case. And you have literally Jean-Pierre at the White House press podium standing there saying that. She's lying right to you, flat out. And nobody in the corporate press that's in that room is calling her on it. And you have the White House press secretary saying these things they're trying to erase history. They're hoping that you will all be sheep, like one of my favorite Pink Floyd songs, and you'll just sort of blindly go with this story. Again, someone in the chat here who says it, Tom Winterborn says, this is so 2020.
Yeah.
I
don't like
the thing
it either.
Is, it worked one time. They're revising a few things now, but they're literally rolling out the same playbook on this to control you. And, again, I come back to what Alex Jones had to say a few weeks ago. He told us that the TSA sources that he was speaking to said that COVID measures would return by mid-September. And is Joe Biden testing positive with this new variant on September 5th, the perfect timing for all of this? Here's Alex Jones in his own words. Watch.
I went and met with him and had a cup of coffee with him. And they said, you got to warn people. Tuesday, we got called in, the managers, and told that by the middle of September, that the new policy is being written, that this is done. They were told this is happening. This is not hypothetical. You will all have to wear masks again, and so will airport employees. Then by the middle of October, they are going to say that everyone flying has to wear a mask. And in the meetings, people began to ask them, well, I mean, why is this happening? They said, well, because of the new variant in Canada and because of the WHO, they may, declare this. But regardless, we've been told this is going to happen.
All right. So to give credit where credit is due, that was the original source. That was the original report on this TSA. And then, of course, some members of the government like backtracking on this. No. You're already seeing it at airports. You're already seeing the groundwork being laid for it. It's only a matter of time before we'll see. We'll see if he's right here just in the next few weeks, right? Well, we'll see mid-September what happens at the TSA, or maybe they got so spooked because this news is out there. And we sort of front run, a lot of us in the independent media were front running this sort of false flag about how dangerous this is and all of this craziness, that maybe they don't do it. They don't force it on people. But my biggest concern, of course, is the kids. And making sure that they absolutely don't go back to this awful version of schooling again, and just absolutely, destroying these children. That's exactly what they're doing.
Well, and the one thing I remember is like on a plane, people trying to keep a mask on a 2-year-old and getting kicked off the plane because the 2-year-old wouldn't leave its mask on, like that kind of stuff. It's
it
just
was
like,
awful.
I don't want to see that again.
Our daughter was 4, and she would just suck on it and chew on it. And I was like, this is not the reason. At least they were cotton, now that we know how toxic those single-use masks are, Anyway.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.